Yes. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Veterans Minimum. I'm your host, Nick Dayas at the Lamb Shows, where you can find me at Veterans Minimum, is where you can find everything for the show. Check us out on Patreon. Send some donations. We won't say no, and it's going to a nice place. My guy, what's good, bro? Conrad Hoyt from Culture Hub. Love those guys over there. Shouts to CJ, shouts to Serge. Uh, Before we started recording, dude, first of all, what's going on? How are you?
Man, what up? I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here. Checking out, the new setup. It looks fucking phenomenal. And ready to get rolling, talking about whatever.
Yeah, man. It's you were asking me before we started recording how long it took me to like set this all up, and I would say since like November 1st. Just kind of, dude. It was I really took my time with setting everything up because I wasn't rushed. I didn't hire a moving company. Everything was like really small that I had to maneuver. The thing that was a hassle, and still there might be some point in this show where like a foam panel might drop because I'm still trying. I just figured out it's like, dude, these stickers, right? You gotta like press them onto the foam first, and then you put them on the wall. I was putting them on the wall and then putting the foam up,
I see.
but it's cool, man. It's coming along. It's my place of work. It's gives the show, I think, a little bit more of legitimacy.
Is it partly insulation that the foam is up? I wonder for the sound quality, is that partly why? Because just even aesthetic wise, it's enough reason for it right there.
Oh, that's exactly why I did it because this is a pretty like decent sized room. I
Yep.
know when I first moved in here, the guy was like, "You're gonna make this your master bedroom." I was like, "No, not really." Like in the other room, dude, there's two dressers, a coat rack, and my bed. Like
Right.
it's this should have been, but when I made this move, it was more so because this is what I envisioned, this is what I wanted. So it was in the beginning, and maybe even last week's episode, there was a bit of an echo, and it took a lot of post production shit that I had to do, which I usually never do because the mics are really good.
Yep.
And I had a little bit, I had like a couple, I probably had maybe 12 foam panels above in my crib.
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, there was never an issue. So that last one, I really had to do some post production shit, which is annoying because, like, a little bit of a secret, bro. I hate to edit.
Wow.
So it's the less editing I gotta do, the better it is for me.
Right. Well, there's no better testament to how locked in you are to this than the fact that you turn this into the workroom rather than your master bedroom. So props, man.
Yeah, man, it's cool. Like you were talking a little bit about the artwork and the biggie one that I have over my shoulder. It's everything that's in here. It's all shit that relates to me or like I'm into. Hey Arnold's my favorite cartoon. So
Love
I
it.
got the guys there.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever seen Money Heist. You ever watch Money Heist?
that's the one from Spain, right?
Yeah.
No, but someone was telling me about that recently. It might have been Serge even that I need to get onto it.
Yo, listen, Conrad, listen. Everyone listening, look. That's my girl Tokyo. It's my favorite show of all time.
Wow.
It's legit. I watched it. I watched it first in English, where it's like dubbed over, and I was captivated. And then I watched this like mini documentary on Money Heist, and it was talking about like what a worldwide phenomenon it was. It's the number one show in the world on Netflix.
Is it?
Yeah, Money Heist, and Neymar was in it. Uh, Benzema tweeted about it, and
Damn.
like the story of it is crazy. And dude, right off rip, the first episode, they give you their best play. They give you their 3rd and 8. They need the
Hooked.
first down.
Yeah.
They're doing the go to, and it just got you hooked from the beginning. And then I ended up watching it twice, all 4 parts, in 10 days. I watched it again in Spanish because you can't duplicate like the passion from like the
Right.
characters when it's like you doing the voiceover on the
Right,
character.
right. It's a little bit wonky seeing the mouth not mirror the
Yeah,
words,
do me a
right?
favor, just move the mic a little bit. The
Yeah,
mic
yeah.
moves too, so if you want to like be leaned back and like you could like push it towards you too. You know what I mean?
I
So
bet.
it
Yeah,
it
yeah.
adjusts. This is why like it's more like laid back and
Yeah,
chilled.
yeah. Money Heist. I'm on it then, man. I can't say no to that.
What's like your favorite Netflix show you ever watched?
Well, I watched Breaking Bad. Um,
Breaking Bad
before
is
it was
good.
on Netflix. Yeah, I watched the last half season live. That was a great experience to say that that you watched it when it was coming out every week. But favorite Netflix show is tough. It's tough. I'm a
Narcos.
Sopranos diehard.
Oh,
I
Sopranos.
love Narcos too, but I'm Sopranos diehard.
You
For
know,
me, it's Sopranos, Breaking Bad, neck and neck.
so this might be a little controversial. I've never really watched The Sopranos in full. Not, I wouldn't say controversial, but it might be a little bit surprising. And a lot of people are like, "Yo, bro, you gotta watch that
Yeah,
shit."
you got to, especially the fact that you just think about the anti-hero. Sopranos and HBO made that essentially. Bryan Cranston himself has said there's no Walter White without Tony Soprano. The things that they were doing in the late '90s, was not done before, and there's so many layers to it. We could, and there are other podcasts that go off on The Sopranos, so we could go off on it forever. But I would say whenever you get that free time, go off with it.
Yeah, it's a very captivating show. I think it was the first show that I remember, and I was young, man. It came out in what, 98, 99, was
Yeah.
it? So
Yep.
I was like 7 or 8 years old, but I remember my mom watching it, and she was like, "Yo, I gotta watch this." There's no like, and she would call her friends afterwards and be like, "Yo, did you see
That's
all
really
the?"
cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now it's like you have it on social media. You just go to social
Yep.
media and gotta stay off it if there's a series finale or some shit. But
Damn straight.
dude, tell me a little bit about your journey in this whole like, so you how would you describe yourself? Like, are you, if I say like you're a writer, is that,
Right.
do you feel like that limits you? Do you feel like that's putting a ceiling on you? Because me, I don't like saying I'm a podcast
Mm-hmm.
host. I also don't like saying I'm an entrepreneur because there's still that, and I talked about this on an episode with my buddy Mustafa, where he's like, "Yo, I'm an entrepreneur now and I own it." And I was like, "Yo, don't you feel like there's a little bit of a, all right, man, you're an entrepreneur?" He's like, "Yeah, there still is, but that shouldn't matter." So like,
Right.
how would you describe the thing that you do?
Well, I think if I could just start off by saying this, I think that's why saying that you're a creative really encapsulates a lot, and that's what we talk about at Culture Hub a lot. It's like creatives, and that means that you can be multifaceted in tons of different things. I don't think necessarily calling myself a writer, because I think about this stuff, definitely limits myself, just because every dream that I've had, career wise or professional wise, and obviously I'm at the onset of it, always encapsulates writing. So I've thought about being an investigative journalist, which maybe that still will come up. I've thought about more so covering, somewhat what I'm doing right now with more culture related things. I've thought about just trying to be an NBA writer. And I've thought about even wanting to write more creatively, being an author, or my ultimate dream job, I think, would be to be a screenwriter, whether that's on the drama or comedy side of things. And so for me, that's what I love. And I think sometimes when I think about, well, if I call myself a journalist, does that limit me? Whereas being a writer is almost more of an umbrella than a journalist is, just because being a writer can go down so many different routes. And that's a great question. That's how I think about it.
That's a good point. The umbrella. I also think of it like as a tree, right? Where like if you're a writer, you're the whole tree, and then a branch of that tree could be like you're a journalist. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? We're like, yeah, I'm a writer, but I'm a journalist. I'm a screenwriter. I'm a documentarian. I'm all this
Right.
other shit along with that. I asked that because I remember reading a quote one time, and it was like, "Stop telling people that you wrote a book and tell them that you're an author. Because if you tell someone that you wrote a book, that means that was it. But if you tell someone you're an author, it means that you write for a living." That was from Eric Thomas. If you're familiar with E.T., the hip hop preacher,
I'm not. That is a great quote, though.
my buddy Mustafa is he works with them, with Eric Thomas and all those guys over there. So it just makes you think, man. Because like for me, it was weird, right? Because I'm in a genre that is still, I would say, like podcast. First of all, how do you feel about podcasting and like the world of podcasts? Because you just got into it as well,
Right.
right? I know you guys are doing Advocate Daily.
Yeah. Yeah. Advocate Daily is a podcast that we've started along with a nonprofit. at Culture Hub within this nonprofit called the Gathering for Justice, which is, we have people on to, as the title suggests, speak about how they advocate daily for, equal justice, and that's what it is. So recently got into it. Um, it's interesting because, podcasting picked up. I don't know what year you would say, like '08, maybe it was started like on the ground floor, and then maybe, I don't know, 2012 or 13 it really kind of hit its stride. It's interesting because it almost seems like it's so big right now that there's like another untapped tunnel that it could go down, and how do you know what that is? I mean, people obviously incorporate the visual side of it, but inherently it is about good quality audio, unique, creative, that people can listen to whenever. And you can't watch stuff whenever, but you can essentially listen to stuff mostly whenever, when you're doing tasks around the house or commuting. um, and so it's fascinating because it does seem like there's somewhere where podcasting can go that we can't even fathom right now. I don't know if you feel a similar way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the only. I would agree with everything that you said, besides, I guess, the timeline. So I first heard about podcasts, I'd say like 2011,
Okay.
and then I was drawn to it right away. This is before I even. This podcast was like the last thing on my mind that I was gonna be doing. Influencer, content creator, like that was the last thing on my mind. So I would say like 2011 it was when I got note of it. And then I would say 2014, 2015. I mean, I started the show in August of 2015. So I always use like the NFL preview show that I do as the unofficial anniversary of the brand. So in 2015, going back to the idea of how do you feel when someone says, like, how you describe yourself, like, yo, I'm a writer. In 2015, Conrad, when you would tell people, like, I have a podcast, it was like, yo, that's pretty cool, man. That's dope. How many listens do you get? How many downloads? Like,
Mm-hmm.
people didn't even know about that, but they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, what kind of audience do you have? Fast forward to 2020, it's like, oh, you have a podcast? Yeah, of course you do. There's over 1 million Apple podcasts right now. It's a lot. That means if you just, and that's like across the board international landscape of podcasting, right? So think about it. If that was just the United States, there's what, 300? Let's just say there's like 300 million people in the country.
Yep.
You're talking about one in every 300 people have a podcast. So if you go into a lecture hall of 600 kids, it's like 2 people have a podcast. And it's only continuing to grow because it's what you said. It's catering to how society is now. We have short attention spans. On demand is booming, right? We spent the first 5 to 10 minutes talking about Netflix.
You're
Streaming on demand. I could watch it. I'll pause this comedy special. I'll get back to it. It'll pick up right where it left off. So, but the roadmap to podcasting, the incline and the ascension of podcasting, it takes large spikes every year.
Mm.
And I think when you see people like The Ringer getting sold to Spotify, you see what Rogan did. It's like, bro, there's like, look, I also mentioned probably 2 of the 5 biggest brands in podcasting.
Yeah.
But there's money to be made.
Yeah.
Like I'm starting to generate some money. It's not so much like I can live off of it,
Right.
but it's striving to it. I have this pretty cool, dope spot that I could stay motivated and inspired and get creative
Right.
because of the show. So, Blue Wire, who I'm a part of, they're doing like awesome shit and they're connecting. And it's like, it's bringing more and more credibility. But I think with podcasts, there needs to be what you said. Like one of the early lessons I got in it just from listening to people was like, well, at the time there was 800,000 podcasts. This is like 2017. I went to a live podcast and I just asked like the generic, like, what advice would you give to someone, man? And the guy was just like, yo, you got to be different. You got to be unique because there's so many. So like,
Right.
why should people listen to you?
Right, right. Yeah, you mentioned the short attention span. The another cool thing about it is that, for all the perils of just life right now, society, and the fact that we have short attention spans, and kind of all the negative implications of that, it is somewhat warming to know that people are just trying to soak up knowledge. That's why people are listening to podcasts. I know when I hop on a podcast such as Veterans Minimum, I wanna learn about some sports that I didn't know before, or something of the week that I missed. And so I think that's a really cool aspect of it. But sure, I mean, in podcasting, as in anything on the come up, or just anything in general, you got to be unique,
Yeah, I think
for real.
that's the biggest tip or advice that I would give to someone, and it's something that we always tend to give out better advice than we listen to that advice. Like I feel like there's a lot of times that I remember I was having a conversation with my buddy Steven, and he's in music. He's a DJ. He's with a record label and whatnot. And they're pretty legitimate. And one time he just hit me up and was like, "Yo, man, I feel like mad uninspired and shit. Like, fuck this. I'm ready to give up." And then I gave him advice. Then a couple months later, I hit him up with the same complaints. He's like, "Yo, bro, remember when you called me on the phone?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, why don't you just listen to that?"
That's pretty beautiful, dude. That's beautiful.
But it's true though, right? We always tend to give out better advice than listening to our own. Because I also think, like, for me, it's like, if I do listen to my own advice, am I a narcissist? Am I crazy? Like, am I just like, am I feeding my ego?
Well, you're taking, you mentioned that you don't listen to much music, and that you're always listening to podcasts.
Hmm.
Whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you're taking knowledge and advice from the stuff you're listening to. And yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. We all hit our highs and lows. It's impossible to be at a high all the time, and it doesn't even have to be a high where you're like jumping up and down because, I don't know, you're about to go on a date with a girl, or like something that would just elicit such like a positive reaction. But like, everything fluctuates. So when you're kind of on that low point, the fact that you have a friend to reach out to that kind of just like is like, yo, like it's like the pep talk that you can imagine, like a sitcom. Like I'm thinking of like New Girl, when they're talking to when they just want a pep talk. Like, it's like your coach. It's like, remember who you are, and as in how your friend talked to you. Like, remember what you told me. That came from you. So that means that's inside you, and that just means you have to channel that.
No, that's a good point, man. And I just feel like we're always better at giving out advice than we are at, like, listening to our own. And you're right about the idea of just the highs and the lows, and that's something I definitely want to ask you about. There's one thing I like to do with the show is I like bringing people on who I am a fan of. I'm interested in their work and their craft, and I'm curious about their thought process. And you're a creative, you're a writer. When you go and you do an interview, how do you go about it? Are you I'm going to jot down these questions? Are you a bullet points guy? Are you a off the top of the head? I follow the conversation and I'll piggyback off. Oh, yo, you know what? This girl just said a dope talking point that I didn't think of. Like, how do you go about that thought process? Because I one I don't read many articles, but I'm a fan of Culture Hub, and I'm a fan of your work because you guys have given me your time. You guys have done a story on me. You guys have, I mean, fuck CJ. The second time I met him, like, invited me to an art show, and then, sorry, the first time I met him, he's like, "Yo, bro, you want to pull up?" And then the second time I hit him up, I was like, "Yo, man, do you think I could borrow, like, that when you guys used to have that office space? Can
Yeah.
I borrow, like, a?" He's like, "Yeah, man, say less, like, no problem." It's like, fuck, man, that's like awesome. Like, not many
Hmm.
people do that. So to bring it back to you, how do you go about your thought process when you're about to do an interview? Because you've interviewed a wide variety of people from what I've
Right,
seen.
right. Man, it really depends on, how much interest I have in it, which is not to say that I ever approach it in a lazy manner, but you know, every time I do my research, I jot down questions, And then if it leads a certain way, then I'll go off script, and I usually come back to that script just because it's kind of nailing points that I want to get. Like
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, a good tie up to an article, and especially us at Culture Hub, and CJ's told me this before. Like oftentimes, just like what advice would you have for someone else trying to get started in your field? Because like I mentioned before, oftentimes we're interviewing creatives, and we're tailoring our articles and we're tailoring our content towards creatives. And so if I'm especially inspired, I will not be shy to like to give a chuckle and just like show kind of my admiration. And I mean, for sure, when I'll go off script just by like, yo, that was crazy. Like, can you touch more on that? Because oftentimes like you don't have to lead them down a path. You can either pause, and so like oftentimes pausing will just have them go off because they don't want to hear the silence, and because that extra second gives them a time that the wheels start turning. Um, and also, if you kind of just ask them a brief, delicate question, it just kind of gives them the freedom to take it where they want to, because people want to talk about their craft and their inspiration and doing what they love.
Do you ever find that the person you're interviewing gets more excited when you don't ask them about their craft because they've been down that rabbit hole so many times? And,
Mm,
like, how often can you ask someone, like, oh, how well, what'd you think of that game you had? Like if you're interviewing an athlete. Whereas,
right,
like, yo, bro, what'd you think of that new movie or some shit? If like they're into Marvel, they're like, yo, what'd you think of
right,
Endgame? And then they're like, yo, you know what? I fucking love that.
right. No, that's a great question. Honestly, I have not really thought about that. Feel like that possibly is how I need to start approaching the certain interview.
I've noticed that I've gotten them to sort of break down that wall.
Mm,
They've answered the same questions. Again, going back
right,
to like being unique, right? Like how do you stand out? And I remember when through you guys I connected with Ariane Celesti, the UFC
right.
chick, the UFC ring girl, and I remember asking her like, "Yo, what are your DMs like?" And she just like went off on a tangent. She's like, "Oh my god, you have no idea." And it's like that kind of broke down her character. She was
That is
cool,
that
she
is
was
a great
awesome,
question.
but it's like you start off with this is how I do it, right? So like I never write anything down. The
Yeah,
only time I did was when I had the Narcos DEA agents because that's like historical context and
yeah,
facts, and I don't want to say anything too inappropriate.
right,
And from the beginning before we started recording, I always ask my guests, I'm like, "Yo, look, is there anything you don't want me to ask you?" Because I'm not in the gotcha business. Like, I think that's lame, bro.
mm-hmm,
Like, I'm not gonna set someone up so I can look smarter than them. I always joke around. I'm like, yo, I'm an idiot. I just like work really hard. You know what I mean? And I'm curious.
yeah,
So I say that in a laughing matter, but I don't want to set you up to like, oh, I got you, bro. Like I think that's
right,
corny. So I've noticed when I interview people, I never have anything down. Like even with you, bro, and like you're a friend of mine now. We've talked a bunch of times. We've DM'd each other and shit, and I've had you on the show multiple times. You were like, "Yo, what are we talking about?" And we're gonna get to some of the stuff we talked about, but I mean, how much of this conversation now, 25 minutes in, did we really plan for? Not much.
5%, yeah,
5%, yeah, because it's just there's camaraderie. And obviously it's easier when you're doing something with someone that you know.
right,
There's a level of comfort. Eventually, like people that I've interviewed multiple times, it's like, well, with every interview, it's more comfortable. It's more
right.
like there's a level of interest that you can't duplicate.
It definitely depends on the type of person too, and then again, you may never know going in. I mean, you said Ariana Celeste, and to get her to break down that wall, you asked how her DMs are. I mean, that's brilliant. It's for someone especially who, I don't know, she's probably busy, and just the type of person she is, asking her something that she wouldn't be asked, or that allows her to kind of like have a exasperated chuckle, like that was genius. If it's someone in a more corporate setting, it may not work, but at the same time, like that, then again, that could get them to break down the wall. So I think that's a great point, and that's why you're good at what you do.
I was it all goes back to like being unique. I
Yeah.
was in a conference call with some company. I'm not going to mention any names because I might work with them one day, but um doing like a conference call, and I was just like, yeah, like I kind of got to do things my own way to stand out. Like I didn't go to school for journalism. I didn't do broadcasting. I didn't do communication. Like I took a public speaking course because it was like a gen ed and you had
Yeah.
to take one. But it's like there's ways to like get creative and be unique. When you put together an article, because dude, I could barely tweet properly. For me to have to write something, it's like I'm not gonna do it. Like I could watch all the Gary Vee videos and it's like, yo, you should do writing content as well. It's like, nah, bro, I'm not gonna do it. Is it
Yeah.
lazy?
Not for
Yeah,
me.
probably, but it's just not for me. Like I know what I'm good at. I
Hmm.
know what I'm comfortable at. I always tell this story. Like 2018, I had braces on, bro. I'm turning 30 in March. It means at 27, 28, I had braces on. But now it's like there's not a camera that I see that I'm not myself and more comfortable. It
Yeah.
was more of an insecurity that I took care of.
Right.
So when you put together an article, like when do you know that it's good? How do you know that it's good? How long does it take you to put like a just like a standard article that you publish?
So we'll say it's not a feature. It's not with off an interview of someone.
Nah, it's just like you're covering the new fours that are coming out,
Right.
the new Jordan fours or some shit.
Man, it's gotten to the point where I can comfortably write it in 30 minutes and then, a little bit editing, formatting, and then getting it to be published will take a little bit longer, but it's just I've been writing so much and so consistently for a while now, and especially to the degree that I am now for over a year. I feel comfortable writing it in 30 minutes, and it's almost like I understand inherently that if I took more time, that wouldn't make it better. It's with a subject that's kind of like is what it is. Like obviously, if I something that I don't know a ton about or something that's really in depth, if I was to go into politics, I'm gonna take longer. But I can write it in a way that I know that it's coming straight from my head, quick and quick and authentic. Um, And I think the other part of the question you asked is just how do I know if it's good? I try to put my own voice in there, especially if it's not an article on someone else, because it's not all about me. I had to understand that I'm not writing so that I shouldn't say I'm not writing so that like people discover me, but I'm not writing because I'm conceited or because I'm worried about myself, and just writing in a way that I feel comfortable with and that I feel is true to myself.
Can I help you describe that a little bit? Because I'm in the same
Yeah,
boat. I think when you do that, it's more that you want to put out interesting than you want to put out for yourself.
right.
And that's something that's really helped me in this field where there's podcasts I do that are for me. Like the Narcos thing was for me. I've always been fascinated by it. I've always been uh, I don't want to say the L word, but I've always been like super intrigued by the life of Pablo Escobar and the
Yeah,
Narcos culture. Like, dude, they were running the world.
right.
Like, three Javier Pena, one of the DA agents, said 4 of every 5 lines of cocaine was from Pablo Escobar. Mind you, I've never done any drug in my life, right? So it's like completely weird that like I'm not a weed head,
Yeah.
I'm not a coke head. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like always been fascinated by that, And I
Bro,
also
that's a
love
crazy
I
stat.
love I love the Colombian culture. Like Colombia is like one of the places I would love to visit. We'll save my love for Colombian women for another podcast. Uh, but it's like that podcast was for me. I made it interesting so that my audience could get something out of it.
Right.
But like with the writing, it's like you want to put forward something that's like dope and to
Exactly.
get people to come back.
Exactly. Thank you for helping me describe that. Yeah, I mean, the other day I hit my friend up who has created a clothing line where he manufactures it in Malawi in Africa, and he has created tailoring jobs there, and he's created uniforms for kids in school out there. And so for a poor country and poor city that it is, Mazuzu, he has he has done a ton, and really just right now, like he's getting the wheels turning. So I hit him up and I'm like, bro, like I love what you do. Not only am I interested in it, but I know that other people would be, and that I know that it fits our audience of creatives and of sustainability and advocacy and altruism. And so that's one of the most recent features I wrote. And you know, it wasn't all about me. This is my friend, but I didn't have to put myself into the piece to get something out of it.
How do you deal with feedback from social media? Because one thing that I've noticed is nowadays there's instant gratification and instant criticism the moment something goes out.
Mm,
And in the past, it's like, all right, I gotta wait until the 6 o'clock news to hear what happened. Now, like breaking news, I mean, shit, we haven't looked at our phones in 40 minutes. Who knows if someone got traded, someone pulled a hamstring, someone got caught in a sex scandal. Like, you just
bro,
don't know
that's
what's.
how quick it is.
Yeah. So you put out an article. Like, how do you deal with? And I don't know. I don't know if you, because I'm a fan of your stuff, and I'm not just saying it because, like, obviously I've gotten to know you. So is there a personal bias? There might be. Like, I want to see you thrive and succeed because, like, the relationship that us two have been able to sort of put together in the last year, I would say. How do you deal with that? Because there is some people that, if you get 100 comments and 99 of them are dope, like, yo, Conrad, that article was sick, man. It made my weekend. Oh my God, I didn't know about this clothing company.
Right,
And then you get that one dude, you get fucking Teddy from wherever, and he's like, yo, fuck that article. It sucked.
right,
There's just something that, like, that is gonna, even though it's 99 out of 100, it's like that one thing is gonna really, like, sit bad with you. So how do
right.
you go about dealing with something like that?
Well, there's always going to be people that want to see you fail. I have not reached a level where I'm getting, constant, where I have constant followers, or even on my articles, just like comments after comments after comments. I remember specifically one time writing, and obviously it's more opinion based, and it was more of like a satire, mocking piece of the orange guy just got voted out of office. And this very like this woman replied, and just she was like kind of coming to my neck, and it was jarring at first. Like it wasn't so bad where I know if I was younger I would have seen that and been like, I would have been shook. I would have felt some type of way, just because it's even whether it's online or in person. When there's conflict, we talked about this earlier off the mic. Like when there's conflict, it makes me feel some type of way, just because it's like that hate is palpable, and you can feel that. And so it kind of took me a minute, because this is the first time that I was like, damn, like she feels that strongly about that and really dislikes me. I don't even remember specifically what she said, which kind of goes to the point that like I've felt growth in that lane. And so as I continue to grow, hopefully, and gain a larger following, or whatever that would mean, there's something to learn, that like there's going to be people that support you, there's going to be people that disagree with you, and then even more so there's going to be people that want to see you fail because of their own insecurities, which drives everything.
Well, I started kind of giggling because, I mean, fuck, that's a hell of a topic you picked to write about.
Right.
Like that, I mean, politics just in general is polarizing. So it was, I mean, look, I'm going to say this 4 times. It's very important. Conrad, it's very important for people to understand this about me. If this is the totem pole of politics, this is the bottom, this is like the high. My level of interest is like at the core of the earth. That's just my thing.
Yeah.
I know Republicans and Democrats. No one has ever heard me talk politics on here. This is as far as it'll go.
Right.
I don't know dick about it. It's just not my thing. From a
Honestly.
young age, I just know people get outraged. Regardless, it's a 50-50 split. Like, people are going to like it or dislike it,
Right.
no matter who it is, right? So, to bring it back to your conversation, it's like, yeah, dude, you picked a hell of a topic. It's a polarizing topic, right? Politics, religion,
Yeah.
spouses.
Sports even.
Sports too, yeah, of course, dude. Like shit, me, the worst criticism I get is like, "Oh, nice fucking pick, dude." You know, especially when like I do like daily fantasy or I do sports betting. It's like, all right, like,
Is it because you shit on their team?
no, yeah. So that's another thing, right? Oh, thank you for bringing that up. I can't tell you how many times I get this interaction. Ready? Yo, man, big fan. Thanks, dude. I love what you're doing with the show. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. What do you think of the Broncos this year? I'll give them 7 legitimate reasons. Well, you know, your 2
Right.
offensive tackles opted out. Your quarterback only played 5 games. I'm a little worried about the backfield dynamic. I think your defense is a little weak. You just lost Von Miller. Chubb is uncertain. Fuck you, bro. You don't know what you're talking about.
That's fucking
That's
right.
that's you in the sports industry,
Yeah,
dude.
right.
If you're someone who's in fantasy football, someone asks you like, "Yo, should I start this person or that person?" God forbid you give them the wrong play. They're gonna put
Right.
your head on a stick.
Man. Well, see, the thing is, at least as long as you've given them like rational reasons, I mean, I don't think they. I mean, obviously, they don't have a reason to complain after. It's not like it's one thing the people that kind of just are like dismissive. Like if I ask, like, and there's sports guys that'll like be covering all 30 teams or all teams with a chance in the playoff hunt, and they'll be like, and they're just something like, uh, do the Giants have a chance to win it this season? Oh, we're not gonna get into that. Like they fucking suck, you know. And then if you're a fan, like, all right, like you can be a little bit upset because I wanted to hear what your thoughts on that were. But the fact that you give someone good reasoning, especially in football, all the different layers of it. That if your offensive line ain't good, you don't see them succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
That's the time where it's like, man, you're really gonna get angry at me. So it's just interesting to hear you say that because you gave them. I mean, I'm sure almost all the time you're giving them, evidence as to why you are feeling this way and picking that way.
Well, it's fan is short for fanatic, and people do have
Forget that.
goggles for their team. A lot of people do see it like that. You
Yeah.
know, like I got one of my buddies. He like wants to get a Frank Ntilikina tattoo. It seems like it's like, dude won't give up on Frank. Shouts to my
Jesus.
guy Impy. He's just like he'll never give up on him. So that's just, but that's like the sports world, right? Like I feel as if I've never been someone to go on Twitter and be like, yo, fuck you and your take, man. It's like, dude, it's to bring it back to sports betting, right? 55% is what professional bettors strive for. 55%, bro. That's failing in
Dang.
public schools. Like
Yeah.
you don't advance to the next year, but that's what they strive for. So it's you're trying to be perfect in an imperfect world. You can't always give out the good takes. And me personally, no one makes a joke out of shit more than I do when it comes to like, oh, so what about that fucking Tampa Bay game last week, right? And I had Tampa Bay as one of my picks, and they got
Did you?
fucking shellacked. Yeah, but
What
it's
was the
like
line? Were they even minus?
they were
4
they
or
were
something?
a 3-point favorite, you know, and they're playing at home, prime
Yeah.
time. Should have been a bounce back after laying an egg against the Giants,
Yeah.
sort of, even though they won.
Right.
It did seem like it was a look ahead game, the Giants, where it's a lot more noticeable in sports betting, and sports betting has really helped me become a better sports fan as far as like breaking it down because look, athletes are humans in the end of the day. So when you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, you're playing Monday Night Football against the New York Giants who have won one win, and you're like, man, you know, we could bring our C+ game and we could win. Because next week we got the Saints in
Yeah.
division. They beat us once. This has like playoff implication. This has home field implications versus being a wild card, winning your division versus going on the road. So in sports betting, that's called a trap game. That's called a look ahead game. And you saw it with the Bucks. That first half, they looked abysmal. You saw the
Mhm.
tweets. It's like, oh, Belichick's a genius. He got rid of Brady. You see all that dumb shit. And then to see what happened with Tampa Bay on Sunday, you're like, oh, man. You know, but there's a lot of things that get factored in. You know, a couple of weeks ago, Conrad, I had my buddy Taryn on and we're talking. And I was like, yo, there's something inside me that doesn't want to give up on the Saints.
Mm.
You know, like there's just, and this was maybe 2 weeks ago, you know, like they had just narrowly beaten the Bears. It's like, man, you know, you got to take everything into consideration. They've added some new pieces to their defense. They finally got Michael Thomas back, who
Right.
Michael Thomas might be one of the 4 or 5 most important offensive pieces that aren't quarterbacks in the
Right.
league.
I saw you talking about George Kittle, by the way.
Yeah, and it's like, Michael Thomas, Sanders, Kamara, Cook, Traquan Smith, Murray, the offensive line, Breeze, they had played a quarter and a half together this year. So context is everything, especially when you're looking at it in sports, because, again, it's, how did this team lose to that team? Well, they lost their running back, wide receiver, and 3 offensive linemen in the first drive. It's like, oh, okay, that's why.
Right.
So, like, adding context, I think it really kind of explains the whole story, in my opinion.